I'm going to formally introduce our presenter for this October meeting of the Metropolitan Study Group of the SRIA. But firstly, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. We have currently 40 people on the call from all over the globe. And I'm delighted that we have so many of you joining us. And as I mentioned a short while ago, just before starting the recording here, that we have a really lovely, extensive network of like-minded individuals here. And there's great strength in this number. And I look forward very much on behalf of the Metropolitan College and the Metropolitan Study Group. I very much look forward to today's presentation by Frater Kevin Wheeler, who is a member of the Metropolitan College number 1, the original college of the entire SRIA, based in London. Although Kevin lives and works in Chicago, and I know him through the Metropolitan College. And one thing I have found and continue to find very impressive about Kevin is his dedication to attending meetings, traveling all the way from Chicago to attend meetings in London a number of times in the year. And he's a very special soul, and I very much look forward to his presentation. So I would ask everybody once again, please, could you mute yourselves if you're not speaking, and unmute yourself accordingly at any point when you do speak. And I'm just going to pin Kevin to the main view on our screen for the sake of the recording for the duration of the presentation. I'm just going to mute somebody here. That looks good. Let's have a look. That's lovely. So we now have 44 people. So the numbers are rising as we speak. And it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Frater Kevin Wheeler. Just give me a moment, please. Kevin, do you have any kind of PowerPoint presentation?
I do not, but I do have a few slides. If that question comes up, I will share them.
Okay, but you don't want to share them as part of your presentation, no?
No.
Okay, in that case, without any further waffling from me, over to you, Frater Kevin.
Thank you, Frater Stephen. Good morning, everyone. Today, I'm going to be discussing the origins of the origins of Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia by Frater Kevin Wheeler. All right, bear with me. The Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia, SRIA, is a secret society of esoteric character which was founded in London in 1865 by Robert Wentworth Little. The society is said to be based on the teachings of the ancient Egyptian mystery schools, which held that true wisdom and knowledge could only be obtained through initiation and spiritual experience. The SRIA claims to be the continuation of these ancient teachings, and it is thought that the name Rosicruciana was chosen to reflect this connection, as the term Rosicrucian was commonly used in the 17th century to refer to a supposed ancient order of mystics and philosophers who were said to have originated in Egypt. It has a rich and intriguing history that has captivated the minds of many researchers and historians throughout history. Today, the SRIA is one of the largest and most respected esoteric societies in the world, with thousands of members affiliated organizations across the globe. The origins of the SRIA are shrouded in mystery, and there is much debate among scholars about the society's true purpose and history. Some have argued that the SRIA was founded as a response to the growing interest in esoteric and mystical subjects in Victorian England, while others have suggested that it was an attempt to revive the ancient wisdom of the Egyptian mystery schools. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the SRIA has had a profound influence on modern esoteric and mystical thought, and that continues to attract a large following to this day. The true origins of the SRIA, or the Rosicrucians, are truly shrouded in mystery. However, with this work, we hope to somewhat lift the veil as to its true beginning. For all intents and purposes, we are told that its teachings and traditions are of the mysterious and enigmatic order of the Rosicrucians, had its roots in medieval Germany. Although Germany is the agreed upon birthplace of the origins of the SRIA, however, I would argue that perhaps we haven't looked far enough, as many believe it to be a remnant of the ancient Egyptian mystery schools. The first recorded reference to the Rosicrucians can be traced back to the early 17th century, when a series of anonymous pamphlets were published in Germany that claimed to reveal the secrets and teachings of the order. These pamphlets, collectively known as the Fama Fraternitatis, made bold claims about the spiritual and philosophical teachings of the Rosicrucians and their quest for knowledge and wisdom. The Fama Fraternitatis quickly gained popularity across Europe and sparked a wave of interest in the order, which soon became shrouded in mystery and intrigue. The exact origins of the Rosicrucians are unclear, with many different theories and legends surrounding their beginnings. Some claim that the order was founded in the early 14th century by a German alchemist named Christian Rosenkreuz, who is said to have traveled to the Middle East and studied with the wise men and mystics of the time. Others believe that the Rosicrucians are a continuation of the ancient wisdom traditions of the Egyptians, the Kabbalah, and the Gnostics. In Germany, it is said to be inspired by the Rosicrucian movement that emerged in Germany in the early 17th century. The SRIA is based on the principles of mysticism, alchemy, and the study of hermetic arts and sciences, and it has attracted members from all over the world who are interested in exploring these subjects in greater depth. One of the key sources of information about the SRIA and its connection to the German Rosicrucian movement is the book The Rosicrucian Enlightenment by Francis Yates. In this book, Yates argues that the Rosicrucianism movement had a profound influence on the development of modern science and philosophy. And she provides a detailed history of the movement, including its origins in Germany and its spread to other countries, including England. Another important source of information about the SRIA and its connection to German Rosicrucianism is the book Rosicrucianism and the Modern World by Walter J. Hanegraaff. In this book, Hanegraaff provides a comprehensive overview of the Rosicrucianism movement and its influence on various aspects of the modern Western culture, including philosophy, science, and the arts. He also explores the history of the SRIA and its relationship to the German Rosicrucianism movement, and he provides a detailed analysis of the organization's principles, practices, and goals. Although the first mention of the SRIA was held in Germany in the 17th century, as I mentioned above, that story was of a man from the 13th century. In France, by the late 17th and early 18th centuries, the Rosicrucians were already well established. One of the most notable of these societies was the Campagne des Rosicrucians Veritatis, or Company of the True Rosy Cross.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. What?
Which was founded in France in 1623. According to historian Francis A. Yates, the Company of the True Rosy Cross was a kind of Rosicrucian society which claimed to have inherited the tradition of the original Rosicrucian manifestos of the early 17th century. In addition to the Company of the True Rosy Cross, other French Rosicrucian societies had an impact on the SRIA include the Société Alchimique de France, the Alchemical Society of France, and the Société Manconi des France Marcus Elucohens de Univers, the Masonic Society of Elected Cohens of the Universe. Although many of the esoteric organizations were influenced by the SRIA, it was also in France where we find the influences of the SRIA, mainly in the rectified Scottish Rite and the Martinist order. The rectified Scottish Rite, or Rite Associates Rectifié, or RER, Knight Beneficent of the Holy City, Chevaliers Beneficent de la Cité Sainte, is the oldest continuously extant chivalric Masonic order, having adopted its current structure in 1778, was heavily influenced in the spread of Rosicrucian ideas and practices in Europe. The influence of the CBCS on the SRIA can be seen in several ways. Firstly, the SRIA was influenced by the ideas and teachings of the CBCS, and its members often had a deep understanding of the teachings of the French organization. Secondly, the SRIA was influenced by the political ideas of the CBCS, and its members were often involved in the political and social activism. Thirdly, the SRIA was influenced by the mystical and esoteric practices of the CBCS, and its members often incorporated these practices into their own spiritual practices. The Martinists were influenced by the ideas of the French mystic Louis-Claude de Saint-Martin, and their teachings had a strong influence on the development of the esoteric thought in Europe. According to R.A. Gilbert, a prominent scholar of the SRIA, the Martinist order was of great importance to the later development of the SRIA in France and England. This is because the Martinist order provided a source of esoteric knowledge and spiritual development for its members, which was appealing to the members of the SRIA who sought a deeper understanding of the ancient mysteries and the inner workings of the universe. Furthermore, the Martinist order also influenced the SRIA's approach to esoteric studies. For example, the Martinist order emphasized the study of Kabbalah and Hermeticism, which were subjects that were not given much attention in the SRIA. As a result, the SRIA began to incorporate these subjects into its teachings, further expanding its knowledge and base, providing its members with a more comprehensive understanding of esoteric arts. In Scotland, it is possible that the Rosicrucian ideas and practices were introduced before the publication of these manuscripts, but there is no clear evidence to support this theory. According to McIntosh, the SRIA was established as a branch of the Continental Rosicrucian Order. The SRIA, which had been founded in 1865. McIntosh further notes that the SRIA adopted much of the ritual and symbolism of the Continental Societas Rosicruciana. According to historian Keith W. Sterling, there is no record of any Rosicrucian activity in Scotland before the publication of the Fama Fraternitatis in 1614. And even then, there is no evidence that it had any impact in Scotland until much later. Overall, the exact year that Rosicrucianism first arrived in Scotland is difficult to determine, but the movement had an impact on Scottish culture and spiritual beliefs in the 17th and 18th centuries. Although Rosicrucianism seemed to appear as one movement across many centuries, there is limited evidence to suggest that there were separate continental links from Scotland and England regarding their influence. According to McIntosh, the influence of the Rosicrucians in Scotland was primarily mediated through the writings of Robert Fludd, who was an English Rosicrucian philosopher and physician. Fludd's works were widely read and studied by Scottish scholars, and his ideas may have had a significant impact on the development of Scottish Rosicrucianism. In contrast, the influence of the Rosicrucians in England was more diverse and included a variety of different individuals and groups. For example, some scholars have suggested that the Rosicrucian movement in England was heavily influenced by the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which was a secret society that blended elements of Rosicrucianism, Kabbalah, and other esoteric traditions. There is also speculation that the SRIA was heavily influenced by Scottish Freemasonry in its creation and development. According to McIntosh, the SRIA was formed by a group of Scottish Masons who were interested in the esoteric aspects of the craft. The founders of the SRIA included Dr. William Wynne Westcott, who was a member of the Scottish Rite and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and Robert Wentworth Little, who was a member of the Scottish Rite and the ancient and accepted order of Freemasonry. The influence of Scottish Masonry on the SRIA is evident in its rituals and ceremonies, which incorporate elements of Scottish Rite Masonry, such as the use of Scottish thistle as a symbol of initiation and the use of the Scottish Masonic regalia in ceremonies. Additionally, the SRIA adopted the Scottish practice of conferring honorary titles on its members, such as the title of the Knight of the Eagle and Pelican. In England, in the late 18th century, there was a revival of interest in the Rosicrucian philosophy, and various Rosicrucian groups emerged in Europe. One such group was the Scottish Rosicrucian Society, which was established in Edinburgh in 1865. According to Gilbert, William Wynne Westcott joined the Edinburgh branch of the Rosicrucian order in the late 1860s, likely around its inception. The Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia was founded by Robert Wentworth Little and William J. Hagen in 1867 after being invited to join the Scottish Rosicrucian Society in Edinburgh by William Wynne Westcott. According to a letter written by Westcott to Hagen on August 18, 1888, he invited Hagen to become a member of the SRIA. In the letter, Westcott wrote, "I should like very much to propose you for membership in the SRIA." Additionally, in another letter, we find further evidence with a letter written by Little to Westcott on October 23rd, 1888. He thanks Westcott for admitting him into the SRIA. Little wrote, "I thank you very much for proposing me for membership in the SRIA." Robert Wentworth Little was a prominent Freemason and a scholar of esotericism who was influenced by the works of Eliphas Levi and the teachings of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. William James Hagen was a Masonic author and scholar and served as Grand Secretary of the United Grand Lodge of England from 1874 to 1903. The SRIA was initially established as an invitational society, and its members was limited to members of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and other esoteric organizations. However, by the early 20th century, the SRIA had become more open, and it began to attract members from a wider range of backgrounds. The SRIA was known for its focus on ritual and symbolism, and it placed a strong emphasis on the study of Kabbalah, alchemy, and other esoteric traditions. The SRIA also had close ties to Freemasonry, and many of its members were Freemasons. In Egypt, while the official history of the SRIA traces its origins to the late Renaissance in England, there have been alternative theories that suggest the society has much older and more esoteric roots. One of the most intriguing of these theories is that the SRIA had its origins in ancient Egypt. This can be seen with its study of Hermeticism. Hermetic philosophy is a set of beliefs that is based on the teachings of the legendary figure Hermes Trismegistus, who was believed to have lived in ancient Egypt. The Hermetic teachings emphasize the importance of wisdom, self-discovery, and the attainment of divine knowledge. These texts were considered to contain the secret ancient wisdom of the ancient Egyptians. Based on the above information, we can infer that the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia was organized and established in London in the late 19th century. However, its knowledge or mysteries originated from several much older sources. Going backwards or forward the way of the origins of the knowledge protected by the SRIA, in my opinion, can be traced as follows. The origins of the mystery schools, including the knowledge protected by the SRIA, originated in Egypt. From Egypt, the mysteries arrived in France, helping to establish various esoteric orders. Upon arriving in Germany, we find the story of Christian Rosenkreuz and the creation of the Rosicrucian. In the late 19th century, after receiving influence from several French Masonic esoteric orders, the SRIA was established in London to pursue esoteric knowledge. Another way to try and trace the origins of the SRIA is to study or pay particular attention to the story of Frater Christian Rosenkreuz in the Fama Fraternitatis. Christian Rosenkreuz was a German doctor and philosopher living in the 13th century Germany. In the story, he travels to the East in search of knowledge, and after obtaining it from several sources, returning to Germany and founded the Rosicrucian order, which was dedicated to the dissemination of this knowledge. Although a well-told story, many scholars have pointed out that there is no historical evidence to support the existence of Christian Rosenkreuz or the Rosicrucian order prior to the publication of the Fama Fraternitatis. This has led some to conclude that Christian Rosenkreuz is a mystical figure who was invented as a part of a deliberate effort to propagate the ideas and ideals of the Rosicrucian movement. Despite the lack of historical evidence for the existence of Christian Rosenkreuz, many esotericists and Rosicrucians argue that his teachings and philosophy are based on a deep understanding of the underlying principles of the universe. According to these scholars, Christian Rosenkreuz represents embodiment of the divine spark that is present within all beings, and his teachings are meant to help individuals realize their own divine nature and attain spiritual enlightenment. One of the key philosophical concepts associated with Christian Rosenkreuz is the idea of the philosopher's stone. This is said to be a substance that has the power to transmute base metals into gold and to cure all ailments. In the Rosicrucian tradition, the philosopher's stone is seen as a metaphor for the inner transformation that must occur for an individual to achieve spiritual enlightenment. Therefore, upon searching for the true origins of the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia, we first find the known history regarding its establishment in London in the 19th century England, with its knowledge attributed to ancient Egypt and the 16th century France, as well as influences from Germany and Scotland. Yet if we hold credence to the legend of its founder, Christian Rosenkreuz Yet if we hold credence to the legend of its founder, Christian Rosenkreuz, the knowledge originated from many cultures, mystery schools. Overall, after writing this paper, we still have no definitive answers as to the origins of the information protected by the SRIA, but I am sure we can all agree that it's very old, and in my opinion, originated from a divine source. Thank you, Fraters and Soros, for your attention.
Thank you very much, Frater Kevin. And I'm just going to remove the pin on there, and I'm going to switch to the speaker view. Just 1 second, please. So, I'd like to say that when presenting any paper to the Metropolitan Study Group, there's a process that each person goes through. I mean, we first of all have to decide on what it is we want to share, what it is we want to explore or to speak about. And then we have to go through the process of writing these things down. And that in itself is very often, it can be a very transformational experience for the individual. It's a very valuable process. And sometimes the presentations in these study group meetings are very long. Some of the recent ones the presentations have been nearly 2 hours or so. But then, even if today, Frater Kevin, your presentation has been a shorter one, it's nonetheless very important because it opens up quite a for certain historian type people, it could open up a bit of a hornet's nest. My personal feeling is that unfortunately, historians like to contend with each other about the origins of anything. And I think historically, it's become increasingly apparent over recent years that, for instance, in the field of archaeology, the current story, which we have been told for quite some time about the age of civilization, human civilization, that the various things that we've been taught are now being challenged very, very strongly. And yet some of the people who are prevalent in the field of archaeology tend to not like the upsetting of previously held beliefs. So in this respect, in relation to what you're speaking about with the origins of the SRIA, it brings into question certain things which all we can do is speculate, because there isn't actually any concrete evidence. But there are nevertheless certain things that would suggest certain correspondences and certain potential origins. So I'd like to open up the meeting for questions. So if anybody has a question for Frater Kevin or a comment, please could you raise your hand by the reactions button at the bottom of the screen, please. And yeah, one thing I would like to say as well, just to get this out of the way. Frater Kevin mentioned that the founding of the SRIA happened in 1865. I know that one of our leading historians, Frater Alistair Lees, has sent an email around today to confirm that in his research, apparently that date is not correct, 1865, and I understand that the correct date is 1867. But in a certain way, I would say, kind of, so what, really? I'm more interested in the speculative aspects of the subject matter today about the potential ancient origins of the teachings that the SRIA and other Rosicrucian orders work with. So I'd like to hand over to Benny, please.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Frater Kevin mentioned that most of the people who founded the SRIA were Freemasons. But today, you know, it's a condition for being a member of the SRIA that you have a master grade in Freemasonry. When did this development happen?
Kevin?
Do you wanna handle that one? When did,
no. These are questions for you as the presenter.
I would have to research that. I don't know when they started to make the requirement for Master Masons in the SRIA.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Benny. Leonidas, over to you, please.
Good morning once more, Fraters and Sorors. My question is there any relationship between the SRIA and AMORC, AMORC? The TMO, I understand, is a part of AMORC, and TMO's information or teachings have a bearing on the SRIA. So can someone enlighten me as to what is the true relationship between the SRIA and the AMORC? I'm very interested to learn that answer.
I believe AMORC is a non-Masonic Rosicrucian order, whereas the SRIA is a Masonic Rosicrucian order. And I believe the founders of AMORC were originally some of them, or a few of them, were originally members of the SRIA.
Can anyone validate this, or provide further light on this matter?
I would like to encourage potentially at a later date to request for some information from Frater Alistair Lees about this. He is very knowledgeable about these matters and has spent many years studying the origins of the society and the connections with other orders. So I would say that that would be a very valuable question to put to Frater Alistair when we have the opportunity. Maybe there's something there that at a later date we can discuss, maybe in a different meeting.
Another question I'd like to put forth is, there are other bodies that espouses teachings of the Masonic order. For instance, the mechanics order, and they have master degree mechanics in their line of degrees. Is there any bearing on the SRIA membership, the coming into existence? Yes, go ahead, please.
I'm unfamiliar with that order. I can't answer that question. I apologize.
Okay. Well, if there's anyone aboard who can enlighten us further, we'd be most interested in learning. Thank you very much. We need to follow up this discussion.
Yeah, I would like to offer just a particular perspective, which is all of the mysteries that any of these orders or related orders study. Like there was something in the description that was put up on the SRIA London website about Frater Kevin's presentation today, which was the word said something like the SRIA claims to hold certain knowledge, and I would say that any organization that claims to be the holders of certain knowledge, that raises a certain red flag for me personally, because I believe that the true knowledge is held by nature, and that any of these organizations, wherever they may come from and whatever degrees they may work, they may have corresponding ceremonies and grades and symbolism that they work with, but all of that comes from the book of nature. We are all borrowing from the book of nature in any of these esoteric studies. And I feel that that is the great unifier, is the fact that all of these esoteric studies are actually, if we're really honest about it, studies of the mysteries contained within nature. That's just something I'd like to offer. We have another hand up here. I'd like to hand over to Brig, please.
Thank you, Shane. Kevin, I do applaud your albeit brief presentation, refreshingly, glowingly brief overview of the history of the SRIA, mainly because I remember, and some of you will possibly remember me having said before, that before I went to university in the late 90s, I was warned by a very elderly theosophist who said, beware of sterile intellectualism. And all through my degree and hopefully now, I tried to remain aware of this. And I think that none of us, including us as SRIA members, should become fixated on a particular society, irrespective of whether we belong or subscribe to it, because as Shane has most eloquently put it, the knowledge of the self, which was allegedly emblazoned over the Oracle of Delphi, man, know thyself, was allegedly reiterated later by Mr. Pythagoras, who said, and thou shalt know the universe. And those of us that are Freemasons are charged with knowing ourselves. So whatever system that we choose, irrespective of whether it was founded and by whom, it matters not a jot. What does concern us all, or should concern us all, is the message, not the messenger. Would you agree with that, Kevin?
Absolutely. Well said, Frater. Absolutely. It's the knowledge that we seek, and everyone can look different ways to find it, as long as you find it.
Yeah, and I would add, Kevin, of course, during the time that the famous actually emerged, it wouldn't be unkind to say that religiously and spiritually, Europe was in the Dark Ages to a large extent. And yes, we relied on this emergence of the teachings of Hermeticism, the Egyptians, the Assyrians, and heaven knows what traditions to inform us of the more esoteric interpretations of knowledge of the self.
Brig, you just said there something that sparks this for me, is the French saying, I won't attempt the French pronunciation of this, but the more things change, the more they stay the same. In a certain respect, is it not true that we are still very much in the Dark Ages?
I regret to answer that in the affirmative, Shane, because we only have to just glance at our technological development over the last 100 years. But sadly, our spirituality hasn't grown in tandem with this. And I'm reminded of something I read, and I don't know, once again, how true this is, but the Greek lawgiver Solon, when he journeyed to Egypt, was told by the Egyptian priests, "You are but children, you know nothing."
Mm. So true, so very true. Yeah, and just like the Pharma Fraternitatis was released with a kind of purpose of creating or inspiring a spiritual renaissance and an empowerment of the individual in relation to their connection with the divinity. Surely the world is in need of the very same now, more so than ever.
Yes, it is, and I draw some sort of comfort from the fact that not only the SRIA, but various other organisations which Kevin referred to, like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn being one, and don't forget the formation of the Theosophical Society in 1875 by Blavatsky, Olcott et al., bringing the teachings of the East to hopefully enlighten the darkness that pervaded Europe at that time. And of course, Shane, you're absolutely right. And today, for argument's sake, surely there has never been a more desperate need for the basic Freemasonic teachings to accept all religious traditions, and arguably none, to be the catalyst for a peaceful revelation in the world. And I am comforted that I read today at length a statement by a member of the Saudi royal household that not only condemned Hamas and Israel, but saying that the slaughter of innocents was totally and utterly unacceptable, and that the teachings of Islam were just not compatible with the extremists in the Lebanon and in Gaza. So I'm comforted that at least a voice of reason is being actually broached, and our prayers must remain with the innocents that suffer.
Thank you very much, Brig. And I'd like to hand over to Charles, please. Thank you for your patience. Charles, go ahead.
It's quite all right. Quick question. I sort of got the impression from your talk that the SRA pretty much is like an evolution or the Golden Dawn base. You know, it sounded like most of the members of the Golden Dawn became members of the SRA, and I know the Golden Dawn basically closed down. I don't know how it ended up in the US, you know, but I just want verification that it is like a continuation of the Golden Dawn.
I've heard that. I wouldn't know because I'm not a member of the Golden Dawn, but I've also heard that it does still exist, both in Europe and the United States. So I guess you got to keep searching for members.
Well, I could imagine that, you know, all kinds
But
of people would create groups using names.
In the beginning, a lot of the founders were basically interchangeable. They a lot of these guys went into each other's organizations to help each other grow and share knowledge, because most of the knowledge was the same from a different angle. If you were kind of like the SRIA today, we've got members from all over the world that they're Masons or non-Mason. Well, in the SRIA specifically, they're Masons, but they're from all over the world, and Masonry is different everywhere you go. So when we meet in our meetings, we're exchanging those ideas and that information, and then we go and bring that back, and we try to bring back better ideas to what we have at home, you know. So it's kind of the same way.
Okay, that actually makes sense, that the issue is not so much one organization being born out of another. It's just people having a shared interest, exchanging information, you know, and it just ends up where it ends up. There was one more question along the same lines. You see, sometimes I'm wondering if I'm confusing things, because I used to be a member of AMARC, and I remember that there was some connection in AMARC with the Golden Dawn, or maybe it was just members. Anyway, let's forget that. Let me give someone else a chance.
Thank you very much. I'd like to hand over to Alex, please.
Hello, everyone. Yes, just some comments. Rudolf Steiner had a very interesting comment. He said that wisdom is an underground stream. In other words, it's flowing, it's always flowing like a river. It has different branches, and it appears and disappears at different times. The point is that Rosicrucianism is a generic term, and it covers a lot of different concepts. There's not one Rosicrucian order, so to speak, right? It's a concept. The comment was asked about AMARC, and AMARC traces itself not through Rosicrucianism at all, but it traces itself through its own connections in France to Egypt, as it says. Whether it's true, I don't know. TMO is a Martinist organization. It's not Rosicrucian, it's Martinism, which is a different branch of the esoteric wisdom. It's esoteric Christianity. It's a different branch. I just wanted to comment on the Golden Dawn. So this underground stream that's been developing over time, immemorial, came to a head in England in the 1600s when Elizabeth I was on the throne. Because around her, as we all know, were all these great luminaries of mysticism. And Rosicrucianism is older than that. I mean, Christian Rosenkreuz is older than that. But that came out of Germany, of course. When it went through England, it developed a different flavor, a different concept, and it became more hermetic. More hermetic. SRIA is not hermetic, it's Masonic. And there's a very big difference. Amorc is hermetic. That is, it uses certain exercises and traditions that are used to develop mysticism. SRIA is not dedicated, is not oriented around mysticism. It's oriented around Masonry. And I just wanted to mention that, I also wanted to ask about SRIA in the US. So there is SRIA Anglia, of course, in England, and there's SRIA America, United States. And I wanted to know if the US version or branch was derived from the English branch, because the US branch is not the same. They do accept men and women, and they're not, you don't have to be a third degree regular Mason to join. So I just wanted to know if there's any connection there.
So Masonically, the organization in America is the SRICF. The SRIA, who claims to be the Societas Rosicruciana in America, Masonically would be clandestine. So
only to England. Only to England.
That's not affiliated with us. Not the one in Anglia. In Anglia is that's where Rosicrucian, that's Metropolitan Cosmon is where we are here now in the Metropolitan Study Group. But the Society Rosicrucian in America, that is a separate organization that's not affiliated with the SRIA or the SRICF. That's why you don't have to be a Mason to join that organization.
Yeah,
the SRICF the SRICF technically basically got their charter or started as a result of getting it from the SRIS, which is the Society of Rosicrucian in Scotia, and they got theirs from the SRIA in England. So it was the SRIA.
So there's a lineage.
Yes, there's a lineage. They formed the SRIS, and the SRIS formed the SRICF.
Yeah, what's clandestine is very subjective, not objective.
Well, yeah, that's why I said Masonically is clandestine, but in the aspect of just Rosicrucianism and everything else, then yeah, that's just an organization that's not acknowledged by Masons, but they're doing the work.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Alex. I'd like to just read to you one of the comments from our dear friend Hasu. Hello, Hasu. And Hasu has written, "It's not the ages that were dark. It is the human mind that is in the dark and cannot see the light which has always been surrounding us." I like that very much. Lucy, thank you for your patience. Over to you.
Thanks, Jane. Kevin, what a wonderful paper you've just delivered. I just wanted to congratulate you and particularly congratulate you on your conclusion after all the study of the various ideas behind Christian Rosenkreuz. As a member of the SRIA, I agree with you, and for me, he is a divine body. Indeed, as Freemasons, we have all already pledged faith in a divine being. And then when joining the SRIA, we pledge faith in a Christian Holy Trinity as well. So Christian Rosenkreuz becomes part of that divine story, and you absolutely nailed that right at the very end of your paper, which I thought was truly wonderful. So congratulations.
Thank you, Frater.
Benny, back to you, please.
Thank you. Speaking about the stream of wisdom, which has been somewhat under attack in different periods of time. For example, at the time of the first Rosicrucians, we had the Catholic Church, which was persecuting many wisdom persons, and also later on, I don't think the Protestant church has been any better in that sense, and it also goes to extremist Muslims and so on. And what my point is that the stream of wisdom has been a kind of forbidden stream at certain times. And I think also in our days, there is a tendency that the light of truth and the light of freedom and of knowledge, enlightenment is kind of under threat by different kind of dark forces, also religious forces. Brick mentioned the situation in the Middle East and all these extremist, hateful forces. And also in today's America, you see many of these forces kind of play, in a way that is not promoting freedom or enlightenment or wisdom, but is actually the exact opposite. And I think the Rosicrucians have always been this movement which was going in the exact opposite direction, and working for freedom, working for enlightenment, and working for liberating human beings. And I still think we have a hope that we will sometime, break through with our ideas and our movements.
Thanks once again, Benny. I'd like to comment on something here. I mentioned earlier that for some years I've been studying with a particular teacher, and one of the things that sometimes he has said is form is everything and nothing. What matters are the principles. And if we can study and understand the principles, then the principles can manifest in unlimited ways. And I would go so far as to say that same saying applies very, very readily to the formation of any esoteric or spiritual order, that we all too easily get stuck in the form of things, like the physical structure and the form of the order itself, and where did that come from, and when did it originate, and who were the founders, and what were the offshoots, and what's the difference. And sometimes I kind of giggle to myself about this. If any of you have seen Monty Python, The Life of Brian, when a group of the people are listening to the master speak at a distance and they can't quite hear, and they're talking about the People's Popular Front of Judea. And yeah, you know what I'm talking about, yeah? And the different factions. Yeah, no, we're the People's Popular Front, and people get stuck in these kind of things. And what we miss all too often is that it's the principles that underpin all of these orders that seek to understand the mysteries hidden within nature. We are not separate from nature. We don't control it. We like to arrogantly think that we can, but we don't, and we never have. We can have an influence on it, but we don't control it. But the study of the mysteries is really a study of nature. So I would put it to all of us here. What I'm really interested in discussing amongst the group here now is the theoretical origins that Frater Kevin was alluding to, leading back to the ancient mysteries of Egypt. And really, does anybody have anything they'd like to share on this particular subject? Kevin, is there anything you'd like to say more on the speculative ancient origins of the principles that we're discussing?
I'm still doing research. I'm actually working on a book that it's more theoretical, where the origin is going to actually come from, but it's going to work its way to Egypt and then eventually to what we have today in Masonry. And I'm working on a book series.
Okay, wonderful. I look forward to you keeping us posted on your progress with that, Kevin. Over to you, Brig.
I hate to hog this, Shane and Kevin. Talking about the ancient mysteries traditions, as a result of my researches, certainly one of the most famous and most informed information that we have on the ancient mystery traditions are those of Eleusis. And of course, there were various grades, but suffice to say, they embraced feminine cooperation in this. And I delivered a talk long ago in my Lodge of Education, Research and Education. And I actually mentioned this. And a brother interrupted me and he said, I'm shocked, he said, that you've just said women were involved. To which my reply was very simple. Since when have we men had the monopoly on the spirituality of the female? And of course, SRIA sadly is associated with United Grand Lodge of England tradition, when arguably it should be aligned with La Droite Humaine co-Freemasonry, which admits men and women. And the time must come. I won't live to see it because I'm old and irascible and bad-tempered and etc. But the time must come when we must acknowledge the femininity of our joint inquiries to know ourselves, because without the feminine, we are bereft.
Thank you, Brig. I completely agree. Once again, I think you and I, in many respects, read off the same page. Yeah, the one drawback I feel with study groups like this is the tendency toward the intellectual exploration of these subjects and the overemphasis on intellectually focusing on our intellectual studies and neglecting all too often the cultivation of our intuitive capacity. And this is one of the reasons really why from time to time we've been having the Rosicrucian Salon of the Arts study group meetings, where the emphasis is not on intellectual discussion of a subject, it's on the use of art, symbolism, imagery, guided visualization, meditation, breathing practices, all kinds of things, dance and movement as well. We've had a wonderful meeting where one of our members choreographed, one of the members composed an original piece of music, and another member also who has a lifelong experience as a dancer and choreographer choreographed a solo dance piece And this was performed at one of our meetings in the Mark Mason's Hall in London, in the main temple there. And that was a wonderful example of something which evokes a feeling. It allows our intuitive capacity to come to the fore more so. And I, for one, gravitate more toward the pursuits that help us to nurture and nourish and bring more to the fore our intuitive capacity. I welcome any comments on this. And if there aren't any, I'll proceed further with passing this over to Medicus, please. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Three things I would like to respond to Briggs speaking about co-masonry and males and females working together throughout this, and also two things on the origin and the way that the SRI went into Freemasonry. In Julie Curtis's book, The Keys to the Universe, I think it states fairly early on that man is kind of more predominantly action, whereas the feminine aspect is that lighthouse for spirituality for men. So I think having a purely fraternal aspect allows man to be able to open up that femininity, that Ida and Pingala, to get that middle pillar. So I can see why there could be some advantages to having only a sort of masculine environment to grow that femininity. So for you, Kevin, absolutely an amazing, concise presentation. Thank you so much. When you said about the origins of sort of the Rosicrucian principles and some of RC's teachings coming from Egypt, do you feel that after RC obviously going to the East, getting a lot of information there, going to the Near East as well as the Far East with the Eleusinian mysteries, do you feel that we've got a more robust version of those Egyptian mysteries and mysteries in nature, or do you think that we've got a sort of breadcrumb through the SRA to then expand into these deeper mysteries? So I suppose, which way do you think the origin of this real mysteries come from? Do you think it's solely in Germany with RC, or do you feel that he's the Hansel and Grail that's leading these breadcrumbs to where we need to go?
I think that he went with certain knowledge and came back with more and spread it. And I think in my opinion, all these places, all these lands who deal with the esoteric schools and this information, this knowledge, I think it's all the same knowledge. I think they're just adding maybe their cultural aspect to it. And that's how those changes happen. And that's where we see the differences. Because when you go and you travel to these places and you start to learn and look at their knowledge and information, it's nearly identical a lot of times. So in my opinion, I think that what we have is a smaller version of those deeper mysteries. And I think there's more to learn. I think there's other things that we could probably tap into to keep going.
Brilliant, great. The other thing was about the integration of the SRA and Rosicrucian in general into Freemasonry. My perspective of that was that the Rosicrucians, after they went laudable, after the 100 years, were kind of persecuted and chased away. Do you feel that there was something specific that, if you agree with that, do you think there was something specific that caused that? And if so, like who and why would they send someone like the SRA into like a Freemason cover, if you so put it?
I don't know. I can only speculate. But think about it. Whenever people have free ideas, it starts to challenge the people in charge who only care about power. So that would be a reason to try to blend in with something a little more formal and I guess not seeming so combative. Maybe I don't know.
Thank you very much for the answers.
Thank you very much. I'd like to throw something into the mix again. That is, so in all of the ceremonies when we first enter the SRIA, there is very strong reference to the four ancients or the four elements: earth, water, air, and fire. And I'm saying them in that order specifically, although that is not the order they're referred to generally in the SRIA, and I believe that to be in error, in my opinion. But who has monopoly on the four elements? Like I say, form is everything. If form is everything and nothing, was it Christian Rosenkreuz or any of those early Rosicrucians who had, who surely they didn't claim to be the guardians or custodians of those four elements? What are the origins of the four elements? They're as old as creation, surely. So for any order to claim that it possesses knowledge, it really doesn't. Nature possesses knowledge. And this really, as I've said now several times, and I will shut up about this from now, all of these are really studies of the mysteries, the hidden mysteries of nature. This is a description of the purpose of the study group, is to offer mutual aid in the study, excuse me, the study and exploration of the hidden mysteries of nature and science. So, yeah, I'd like to pass over to Alex, please.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm wondering if to develop the intuitive side, one needs to work less in a group and more within. I'm not sure how much you can share about experiential things in a group. So that was my comment about that. But regarding men and women, which seems to be on everyone's mind, men and women are two aspects of the same, right? The soul, the higher self, is not male or female, okay? The personality is male or female, and it changes from life to life. Women have always been involved in the mysteries until the Piscean age, when, of course, the monotheistic religions suppressed that. But before that, women were integrally involved, and they have to be, because there is a law of polarity. And if one emphasizes one aspect, i.e. male, then the tendency is to go to the other pole, which is i.e. female, and emphasize that aspect. And that's what is wrong, because you're always going to go back and forth from pole to pole. The ideal is to find the balance or the merging of the two in the middle. And that's what I think why it's important to work in mixed groups and not be totally male or totally female. In the human being, we have the anima and the animus, that is the male and female, within us, all of us, right? We don't have just one or the other. So it's important to remember that we can emphasize one aspect of our being, but the other aspect is always there. And to not recognize it means that you're going to have to go and work with it in the future, because from the polarity, you will always go to the other side. Find the balance in the middle. Someone's called it the middle pillar. Find the balance in the middle, and then you'll have both sides active, and you'll be more in harmony. That's my opinion.
Yeah, from the information that I know about most of the esoteric organizations, yeah, you do need both aspects, male and female. I think the SRIA might be the only one that I'm a member of that is not doesn't have both.
I would like to add something to that. I totally agree with you, Alex. Completely agree with what you just said. If we look at the symbolism of the tree of life, the Kabbalistic tree of life, and you have the two outer pillars of force and form, and yet the middle pillar of equilibrium, the central pillar of equilibrium. And if you trace that from the Earth plane all the way out to Kether the crown, if we trace all the way up to the top, what we refer to as the most high is beyond either male or female. It's undifferentiated at that point. It's pure potential, as yet undifferentiated into either the masculine or the feminine archetypes. And the middle pillar itself, the whole purpose of it is to bring into balance those extremities, or the forces and forms that are constantly back and forth, as you referred to there, Alex. And really, for me, I have no interest in the outer, or communing with, or evoking anything to do with the outer spheres on the tree. What interests me particularly is the work of the middle pillar and rising up the middle pillar. And I think that this is really intrinsic part of yogic practice, and also the Taoist practice of Qigong, which is something I'm very familiar with. And that it seeks to harmonize the yin and the yang together so that they work as one in harmony and balance. Over to you, Charles.
I'm sorry, I just had to jump in here. A few things, but number one, this issue of male and female. One of the things that used to always annoy me is when people, really smart people, can take the high moral ground and justify whatever their prejudices are. You know, the bottom line is, all this talk about polarity and the differences between male and female, you know, isn't really worth anything. Humanity, we're so diverse in both groups that you can't sit here and say that this woman over here is pure woman and has this spiritual significance, and this man over here is pure man and has this spiritual significance. Because when you start talking about us all, we're all so diverse that we have a mixture of each. So you should call a spade is the bottom line, a shovel. It's just chauvinism, plain and simple. Now, of course, you have the right, if you feel like having a group of men, I firmly believe you should. You know, if you feel like having a group of women, I firmly believe you should. I found that when I became a Mason, it was good being surrounded by men, you know, but it just drives me crazy when people justify whatever they want by some moral, or whatever you want to call it, mysterious reason, you know. And then what's good for you may not be good for everybody. So to sit there and say, if I'm going to be a part of this organization, there can't be any of this other kind. Yes, it's true. You have your lodge, you can have within your lodge, but then the lodge next door may be mixed. What's the problem? And then the other point is, you know, I used to belong to an organization called the African Preservation Society. And we used to practice the Egyptian mystery. We studied the Egyptian mystery system. And one of the things that always puzzled me was that while in Amark, and what I thought was the golden rule, I got the impression that what we studied as the Egyptian mystery system was not necessarily the same thing as what I was studying under these Western organizations. As a matter of fact, yeah, I can say ultimately they all come together, but the reality was, it was like there were two different sets of information. And the other thing that I kind of understand why Westerners historically have always saw Greece as the birthplace of all this. And then we began to learn that actually Greece got it from Egypt. But the truth of the matter is Greece got it from everywhere in the ancient world that had existed. I mean, information was shared throughout the ancient world. So it wasn't only Egypt that Greece got its knowledge from. And the same thing with Egypt. You know, it turns out that these people traveled all over the world. There was exchange of information. So tracing things to its sources is, you know, almost a futile task. Anyway, I'm going to start rambling, so I'm getting off.
Thank you very much, Charles. Kevin, do you have any comments at all on that?
No.
Okay, thank you. Leonidas, you have your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I wanted to shed some kind of light upon what you said about yogic practices and the Kabbalah tree of life. Because what popped up in my mind is an electrical principle for those of us who are familiar with electrical engineering. The principle of resonance. When the graph rises up to the top, where Z is equal to R, impedance is equal to resistance, and the power factor is equal to unity. That is at the maximum operating point that we as humans could operate at when we're all in unity. And so Idam Pingala travels up Shusumna, up to the top of Brahmacharya, where Ketha would reside. And in that wise, it's a point of resonance, of electrical and physical unity. And after all life is electricity and vibration. We're electrical beings. So we can't separate ourselves from the female principle. It is inherent within us because we're biologically made up of male and female, whether we like it or not. The XY chromosomes are there in all of us. So hence, we move together towards this point of reintegration, as TMO would put it, into that same unity. So the idea of a polarity individually exists, but I think the point of balance is where we are trying to get to, that point of resonance, the point of reintegration with Ketha, Brahmacharya, so that we might return ourselves back to the source from whence we came. Thank you, Fraters and Forwards, for your patience.
Thank you very much, Leonidas. That's wonderful. I completely agree with you. That's very eloquently put. Thank you very much. Gustavo, over to you, please.
Hello. Yeah, I think it's quite interesting. It's I don't know if you call it like distinction between male and female. I think that was that's evident as well in the symposium of Plato. I think there's the androgen, and then they get some sort of like divided, and there's always this this passion, this eagerness to look for the other half. And I'm quite passionate as well about the Divine Comedy of Dante Alighieri, and also Dante. He was part of Fedeli d'Amore, who were some sort of esoteric group of people that wrote these poems to the female figure that they describe it mostly as divine. And in the Divine Comedy, Dante, he sort of Beatrix was the one that comes and brings Dante to heaven, closer to God. But then there, in the last part, there's some Bernard who is the one that has to take Dante to meet God. And I've read some papers when they describe some Bernard as some sort of a Gnostic state, that Dante has to become some sort of a purified version of himself, that he managed to achieve that through the female figure of Beatrice. And then Dante says that when he reaches God, he becomes some sort of state of consciousness, love, that unifies everything in the universe. So I don't know, it's a good point that maybe through the female aspects, so the opposite, we might reach a state of gnosis. I recently joined in Freemasonry, so I'm not a big expert of esoteric stuff, but that's my reasoning. I don't know if anyone has any comments on that.
Kevin, over to you.
I don't have any comments, but you're on the right path, brother. You're definitely on the right path.
Thank you so much, Kevin, and thank you for your presentation. I really like it.
Thank you.
So does anybody else have any comments or questions or observations, please, for Kevin particularly? Yes, Brig, over to you again.
Kevin, I was very interested in Medicus's question about where our traditions come from, and indeed your answer. And perhaps we shouldn't become too fixated of where all this wisdom originated, because arguably it is indeed lost in the mists of historical time. And I'm reminded of something that I read, and because I'm old and my memory doesn't serve me well, reading an article about a visit to Europe by a North American Red Indian chief, who was giving a lecture on North American Red Indian spirituality. And apparently he was asked by a member of the audience, "Are you suggesting, Chief, that we should adopt the study of North American Red Indian tradition to advance our own spiritual understanding?" And the chief said, "No, study your own." And I thought about that, and I asked myself a simple question: what is my own? And the answer was basically, I appear to have an intuitive affinity to the Norse tradition, the Norse myths, and its teachings. That happens to be for me, and I'm sure the SRIA, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the Theosophical Society, and all the rest. It's a question of finding our own particular route to develop the knowledge of ourselves. And going back to Alex's comments about femininity, it's my understanding that there are matriarchal societies, patriarchal societies, but perhaps what we really need is a matristic society which acknowledges the balances between the male and female.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Brig. Thank you. Kristen, over to you. Good to see you, Kristen. Kristen, are you there? Okay, Kristen.
I'm sorry.
That's
can you
it.
hear
There we
me?
are.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. Who's your friend?
This is a friend's little rescue pup, which I'm always happy to have, Charlotte. I'm watching Charlotte until Monday. Anyway, my comment was Rudolf Steiner had said when I was, studying it formally in the 70s, that as far as these mystical orders, the male actually was inherently born with, I forgot the word used, but something like the strength to bear the full intensity of spirit, which was why these orders were limited to males. But I believe that, you know, now it is pretty much equal, you know, as far as the intensity that can be borne. I just wanted to add that in.
Thank you, Kristen. Does anyone have any comments on this? One thing I find very, very interesting about this is, you know, the subject of Kevin's presentation is the history of the SRIA, but sometimes the questions that are put and the observations that are shared tend to take the discussion into some very interesting areas, and it seems like a theme naturally has developed today, which is discussing polarity and harmonization. So yeah, I find this very interesting. Charles, over to you, please.
Well, just to add what she's saying, I would even go as far as to say I would disagree with him. Simply because if you look at ancient societies, you'll find that there were more priestess than priests, except for in Egypt, you can argue. But throughout India, China, Europe, you would have found more priestess where the men were too busy soldiering. So I think Rudolf Steiner got it wrong.
I think if you look back in history, I think it's more the oracles, the ones who would tell
What's
the
the
future.
difference?
And the difference was the priests would surround the oracle and get guidance from the oracle.
Oh, so obviously the oracles were more spiritual.
The oracles were the spiritual ones. There was the females, and the priests would come get knowledge from them, and everybody would go get knowledge from them, and then they would take it back and then make their decision on what they were going to do.
Yeah, exactly. Which was to tie into her point.
Which would be the opposite of what we're all saying. Instead of we need the equality, it would seem more like this, the woman has the more spiritual aspect than the male, and that's why we need them, so that we could tap into the deeper, higher essence of ourselves.
Exactly. That was it. Thank
you. Benny, back to you, please.
Thank you. I would like to ask Kevin and also the rest of you who has knowledge about the Rosicrucian history. If it's not true that in the early movement of Rosicrucians, there were actually a lot of women involved. And also, I remember having read the wonderful book about the German Rosicrucian Mailänder, that he also had a lot of female students and female sisters in his community. And I mean, it seems to me that that females were originally a natural part of Rosicrucianism. Isn't that true?
I don't know, but for me, just looking at just like the historical things, if you just go and dig deep enough, everything switched over when we switched to a patriarchal society. Before, women were worshipped. We treated them differently. Everything was different. It was whenever that switch happened, we took over and tried to claim everything like we did it ourselves. That's basically what happened, in my opinion.
Yeah, but still, you know, as far as I understand the Rosicrucian movement, it was a kind of underground movement, which has showed radical ideas, you know, compared to the existing society, much more kind of visionary and intelligent than the rest of the society.
Well, when the Rosicrucians, when it first appeared with the pamphlets, nobody knew who was anything. So you don't know who was writing what. We don't know if maybe some of those individuals were women that were writing some of those documents, or maybe the influence may have came from women, or maybe a man and a woman worked on it together. We don't actually know the origins of who actually wrote the documents. So everything's speculative, and it is interesting, actually.
Thank you.
Charles, back to you, please.
Actually, with Lebowski's group, there was supposed to be a lot of mixing, to the extent that in Europe, most belong to both. And I think that probably even extended into the US, that men and women, during that time were very active together. At least, with the Rosicrucians I know of, because Masonry I can't speak of back then. But the Rosicrucians I knew about, I looked into them, and yes, apparently there was so much overlap.
Are you discussing AMORC, or are you discussing a different Rosicrucian organization?
The different Rosicrucian organizations.
Right. Other Rosicrucian organizations allow women, and always have allowed women, like AMORC.
Oh, okay.
But
the
SRIA
right
has never allowed women.
Say that again?
I said the SRIA has never allowed women.
Yeah.
So AMORC is different.
Yeah,
AMORC is non-Masonic, so they allow women. So they have that more deeper spiritual aspect. And like the young lady said, they focus on more mysticism. It's a little different. The SRIA is a little different, where it's more, I guess you could say, spiritual research, philosophical. It touches on Hermeticism a little bit, but it's not. It doesn't go into, in my opinion, it doesn't really go into the experimental stuff like AMORC tries to do, like the mysticism.
Thank you once again, Kevin. Hasu, over to you, please. Good to see you, Hasu.
Good to see you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I've been listening to this conversation with intrigue and interest. My view is we're talking of something that was maybe written, practiced, done 300 years ago, 200 years ago, and yet we're obsessed with that. I mean, you talk about alchemy. We're talking about 300 years ago when the chap sat there with the most crudest, primitive bits of equipment, trying to create another a portion or a Today, a chemist will do that in a lab without any problems. Why are we focused on something that 300 years ago someone was trying to create, thinking, oh, I'm going to invent something new? I think we're at a crossroads in real terms of where are we going? Are we going forward, or are we going to hark back on the good old days, as they used to say, and just live by those and think that, yes, they taught us everything? Should we be more focused on what today's society requires, emotionally, spiritually, esoterically? Because if you go and talk to a younger person who may be interested in these subjects, and you tell them, 300 years ago, this was written about it, and they'll say, oh, and what's happening now? And we stand there and look at, hang on, I better go back to the books and find out what's going on. So Kevin, it's great that you're taking the time out to do a presentation and then come back with unfortunately I missed it because I was at a lodge meeting doing a double initiation. So I rushed back, switched on, and I was on a blank screen. But what are your views? How much do we hark back and carry on thinking that the past has got all the answers when we're 300 years ahead in time, and we haven't found any real answers from that? So how should we be looking for those answers now? What should be our trajectory now?
Honestly, I think that it is important to look at the past in order to see and plan for the future. Because if we don't pay attention to the past, we'll make the same exact mistakes over and over again. And a lot of those mistakes were really atrocious. I think that instead of just looking at the past, which we normally do, we need to look in between the lines of the past and actually focus on the causes of these things, which are usually us in the first place, but we don't like to admit that. So I think there is a reason to look in the past to find out, to guide the future. That doesn't have to mean that, but it should never be the same. I think we should start focusing on more of how do we create change now. But some of those ideas of the past are some of the same exact things that we face today. And when they did it, they were brave and they fought against it, and they did it. Now I think in a way we're cowards. We're afraid to fight back.
But yes, I can understand that. But again, the issue arises that for 300 years we have had enlightenment traveling in a sort of a forward momentum, but nothing has happened really. If you think about it, let's say, what have we done? What has improved? What have we created a new? I mean, we still suffer from the same divisions that they suffered 300 years ago. So, in a way, 200 years ago, they read that and said, oh, we're going to change everything. 100 years ago, read the same thing and said, oh, we're going to change everything. We're coming at the same situation now. We're saying, oh, we must look at the past and we're going to try and change everything. But is this going to be an eternal cycle of, the business meeting, where everyone talks about doing it, but no one does anything?
I think it's going to absolutely be a continuous cycle until we actually go ahead and do something about it. We need to go out and speak our voices and be heard to the general public so that they can actually see and hear our voices. We're still hiding behind, like, hey, well, we don't want to show our Masonic regalia because they're going to ask questions or they're going to attack us. No, we need to actually talk to people about our ideas when we talk about, because we're all on the same page. And once they realize that actually we think the same way, maybe we get more people to wake up. That's the way to do it. We've been talking about it, but we're not doing it. We have to do it. It's our fault.
Yes, because I've I became part of SRIA because I have found it to be a phenomenal concept and a phenomenal way of trying to encourage and develop ideas through a process of self-assessment and analysis, and also through sharing ideas. I was talking to someone again today, initiate, and we're talking about the future, what happens, how, and I mentioned SRIA, of course, but I think it's worthy to be educating those who are coming into it, to let them know that craft gives you ritual, SRIA gives you the esoteric ideas. Craft is based on stories that are created into rituals in theatre and drama, whereas SRIA it encourages you to develop your own self through the help of others, or with the help of others, and through perseverance. So I think in a way, sometimes I think there's too much overlap. And when we talk about men and women, men and men, women and women, does it make any difference to anyone? Does it? I think does it really make how many people are worried about whether you practice your masonry in a mixed lodge or separate? Those are constitutional matters for grand lodges, and not for the ordinary mason. Because to me, a mason is a brother. A frater is someone whose journey is going to be shared with me to find something that is a better life for not this generation, for the future generation.
Hasu, you mentioned a little while ago alchemy, and when generally a lot of people are speaking about alchemy, they only go back a number of hundreds of years, and yet it could be said that the practice of yoga and also the practice of Qigong, the origins of those practices go back several thousand years.
Yes.
And that is alchemy. Those practices embody the alchemical process of evolving the self and cultivating
exactly.
And harmonizing the different elements within ourselves and refining ourselves so that we become better versions of ourselves and hopefully more attuned versions of ourselves.
After all, we think of it, we're probably 95% water, probably, and
yes.
So we are just made up of every element that we see out there, except we don't realize that we are just a separate form of the same elements which exist out there. But great, thank you for allowing me to say a few words. Bless you.
Thank you very much, Hasu. Medicus, over to you again, please.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to put my own diametrically opposed opinions to what Frater Hasu had just said there. I feel like the reason that we go back and we look at these old texts is the motivation to want to change. You say that, you know, we look back and nothing happens. Well, sometimes it doesn't always succeed, but because those old texts are still there, we're still looking back and we're still getting that motivation to want to change. And I feel like that's always something worth picking up on. Also, the fact that this is specifically SRIA. So there are sort of qualities that gives you. If I wanted to go to a different organization that was open for males and females or slightly more modern in its approach, there are things like the Theosophical Society or AMORC. I feel that as soon as we're, you know, this is a study group for SRIA, I feel that the importance really is, and the reason for joining for me specifically was the fact that it was fraternal and it was looking at these ancient texts. Like Kevin said, reading between those lines, knowing where we come gives a great understanding of where we're going. And to then approach the concept of chemists these days working on alchemy, I'm pretty sure that there was a lot of information, yes, that has been picked up now that wasn't there 300 years ago, but equally there's a lot of information 300 years ago that is not there now. So I feel that there is a lot to be picked up from old texts, specific ways in which an organization works. Like to reinforce Charles' point of view, everyone has their own path. Some want it mixed, some want it more fraternal, one wants, you know, maternal, the patriarch, feminine. It's everybody's got their own unique journey back to unity, and I feel that just being able to endorse every possible avenue that can only greater, you know, help more people walk different paths to get to the same ultimate truth. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. Brig, back to you, please.
Yes, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, as no doubt Hasu will. His question was all about us being relevant in today's world. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin's answer was something right, and backed up by Medicus. I do think we need to look back at the ancient texts, because they were in a very, very similar position to us, where the darkness of spiritual ignorance was very prevalent in their day, just as much as what it is today. And perhaps the lesson for us is, as Kevin suggested, that we look back at the possible mistakes and the misinterpretations and the lack of adapting to the relevance of our own times, to make us relevant in today's world. And perhaps that's the task, by whatever means we choose. But on a final note, going back to Alex's point, I don't think we need these vast swings of pendulums, be it matriarchal or patriarchal. We need, I think, as she said, a restoration of balance, and perhaps that is our lesson to become relevant in today's world.
Kevin, any comments, please?
I agree, but I don't see it happening in this organization. And plus there's so many organizations that do allow for the mixture of both. But like many have mentioned in this thread, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You have to get in tune with yourself and achieve that balance. Whether you're embarking on this journey alone, in a group, with the same sex, with opposite sex, it's still a self journey. It's not only a self journey, but it's also a group journey.
Thank you very much, Kevin. We've got somebody here, Google Pixel 3. If you could introduce yourself, please. Google Pixel 3, wherever you are.
Hello?
Hello, lovely.
Hello, hi. My name is Janelle. This is just a question for Kevin.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Does the work of Edward Fowler-Leeson wrote Zanoni prove connections between the SRIA and the Egyptian Memphis Mizraim Masonic Rite in Naples?
I'm sorry, you cut off.
Oh, which part you got up to?
The whole thing was kind of cut off. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. I was just wondering, does the work of Edward Fowler-Leeson, Zanoni, prove any connections between the SRIA and the Egyptian Memphis Mizraim Masonic Rite in Naples?
I am not sure. I could not answer that question. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Where are we? Benny, please, back to you.
Thank you. I think we have to acknowledge the actual progress that has been taking place during maybe the last 150 years. If I compare myself to my father, for example, who was a worker, you know, in a printery, and who was going to school for 7 years or something, and my mother maybe got out of school after the 5th grade or something, you know, and the possibilities that we have got nowadays. I mean, we can even, I mean, just look at us right now. We are communicating, you know, across borders, you know, all over the world. We can see each other, we can communicate with each other, and there are so many possibilities of development and knowledge and understanding, you know. And I think it's crucial that we really nowadays when we have the chance to meet the wisdom teaching, that we really acknowledge our fantastic possibilities that we have, and also that we kind of take up this challenge, you know, of helping the world by our you know, knowledge and our wisdom.
Benny, thank you very much for what you just said. I really agree, completely agree with everything you just expressed there. What really matters, what really interests me personally, is what can we do now? What can we do with the fact that we have a connection with a network of like-minded individuals in meetings like this, who are scattered all around the world, who choose to come together for these kind of meetings? What can we do with this practically? How can we develop our work in the real world more so? How can we radiate an influence that hopefully assists with the spiritual evolution of humankind?
I remember that you were leading a kind of meditation once when you know, Pluto went into the sign of Aquarius, and I think this kind of sometimes meeting and doing some meditation together, I think would be very, very nice.
Benny, it's very interesting that you say this, because next month, is it? Yeah, it is. No, sorry, not next month, the month after. I'm a little bit ahead of myself here, but the December meeting of the Metropolitan Study Group, I have the privilege of leading that, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing in the December meeting, just leading up to the midwinter solstice. So yeah, this is a subject I'm going to be expanding on and exploring very passionately during that meeting, but for now I'll just hold back. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Hasu, once again, over to you, dear friend.
Thank you. Interesting that we talk about the past. Yesterday, I'm sure you are aware of it, we had the SRIA international meeting, and the discussion was on the farmer, the starting point of SRIA, if you will put it. And through AI, that has been translated into very modern, simple English. understandable. And when you listen to that, any party political leader would have been proud to make that speech. So when you translate things and bring them into today's age from the past, they're not necessarily relevant if you go by it. If you think about it, I mean, I'm sure some of you have done that and translated that into modern English. What you may lose, are we trying to be at times be slightly superior because we indulge in the past and older versions of things, or are we trying to be creative at the same time? How do we get the message? I mean, that's what I'm trying to get at. Medicus spoke about the issues of the past. There's nothing wrong in the past. Past is as good as the present and probably the future. If that is your way of finding your path, hey, that you're found a successful way. Many of us look for paths and we can't find them. So it's not how you find the path or which age you find the path in, but if you're satisfied and it gives you that inner peace and inner tranquility, then you found the path. Whether something is repeated from 300 years ago. We spoke earlier on about the yogic practices. I mean, they're thousands of years old, but millions get peace out of doing yoga every day. The meditation. So I don't think, maybe I've still phrased it wrong, but I wasn't saying that, now let's dump everything in the past, let's forget it. What I'm saying is that how do we get the better interpretation of the past to make it relevant for today's grouping? I said, the farmer sounded completely like a party political broadcast. So I said, hang on, if I go and tell someone this is what the farmer is in modern language, I said, you're not trying to recruit, are you? So really, my point is basically wasn't trying to say that the past, but it's how we interpret it and keep the origins, the original ideas, but without losing them to pass on to the future generation.
I think it takes examination. I think when we examine the past, a lot of times, like you said, you lose the essence in translation a lot of times. Yeah. And in order to properly examine the past, unfortunately, we have to study other languages so we can actually really gain an understanding of what that was meant by those words. When you translate French to English, you lose a lot. The feel, like that language, it has emotion with the words. There's a lot of languages that are like that, that's not like English. And when you translate it, you do lose things, and you try to make up these words that are supposed to mean closest to it, and you completely change what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, grammatically as well. You sort of try to fiddle around and come up with a complete different meaning. Yes, I fully understand that. But look, to me, it's a very simple thing. Everyone has the mindset to be able to find the path and to make a journey. But as a group, that journey becomes easier, because you're piggybacking on each other to learn, to share the knowledge, to raise your doubts, to encourage others. So I think, I mean, I love this journey, and I think it's the best thing, these meetings, especially, we keep conversations running, we keep ideas moving, and that's great. I mean, that's what it should be all about. But I think, everyone here has a different view of how to do things, or how to progress, or how to meditate, or how to contemplate, or how to internalize. But it doesn't mean that they're wrong and I'm right, or I'm wrong and they're right. We're all right in a way, because this truth is invisible. It only becomes visible when you can put your finger on something and say, I have an answer.
Thank you, Hasu.
Thank you.
Over to you, Medicus, please.
Thank you very much. Going on the translation, it brought up something that I've been really interested in recently. I don't know if anyone's heard of Stan Tenen from the Miro Foundation. He took the first sentence of Genesis, which was in Hebrew, which is 22 letters, and then found that he could make matching pairs, and that those matching pairs actually correlated into a shape and was able to produce a shape of sort of every letter in Hebrew if you twisted this one shape. So I feel like this is along the lines of sort of using gematria to be able to decipher the names of God in some of the Platonic shapes, as well as being able to do something akin to Michaelic yoga, which I believe is a Rosicrucian practice, in which you can absorb what the text is saying spiritually. So I feel that the very specific way that some of these alchemical texts especially have been put down is very important. And like Kevin said, the translation of something like Divine Comedy, when we was here, I believe we was here when the last presentation about it, is that there's also grammatical structure in the way that it's put together. Certain number of sentences within one of those cantos, and I believe it was like something ridiculous like 33. But so I feel like there's a lot that we can sometimes miss, as well as other psychological repressed things, such as using the pelican, for example, as the vessel, or the lion or the dragon. These are all very patriarchal things, very maternal sort of aspects, archetypal parts, which I feel could get lost. And when it comes to finding your path and your own truth, I believe I read it somewhere that truth is the only thing that can cage you in sort of these dogmas and illusions. So I feel always searching for something outside of your own truth is the only way to be able to move forward. So embrace challenging it every time.
There's a saying that I love that was apparently attributed to Emanuel Swedenborg, who was a contemporary of William Blake. Opposition is true friendship. It's when we have opposing views and we can discuss things openly and respectfully. That's true friendship. Brig, over to you again, please.
Yes, a question for Kevin. Would you agree that to be relevant in this day and age is simply to heed Mahatma Gandhi when he said, "Be the change"?
I would agree. Yeah, we that's the only way is to be the change and to always try to keep evolving.
Yeah,
thank you.
I completely agree with both of you. Back to Medicus, you mentioned Stan Tenen, geometric metaphors for life, isn't it? One of his presentations.
Yeah, he was able to sort of show that there was the flame of conscious, which you hold in your hand, and you'd be able to, with the shadow specifically, which would be the fourth dimension or spiritual, be able to depict each of the letters. He also went into the distances of the points. So say if you had 100 by 100 Merkaba, then one of the points would geometrically then correspond to the different names of God, Eloha, Elohim, Yaha, Adonai, and others like that, and the toroidal nature of what you can get from these texts as well from deciphering it. So really good stuff.
And from what I understand, that meditatively those can become like vehicles that can be used to attune and cause us to vibrate in affinity with certain principles.
I believe it's called Michaelic yoga. So you kind of breathe out that you are experiencing the divine, and the divine is in everything, and then breathe in what it is you're taking from the text. So subconsciously, be it your HGA or just at a subconscious level, your spiritual level, you're taking in things from the text that is not only between the lines, but kind of behind on a different plane or a different dimension that is interlaced with it. So when you read a spiritual book or alchemical book, it's really deeper than the words. It's something a much different level that I don't think anyone could translate, see, or understand, but it's there in my opinion.
I agree with you. I find that subject very interesting. There's the words are really just the containers. They're the vessels. They're not the essence that is contained within the words. We get stuck in words, don't we? We've all too easily in the form of words. And yeah, often they can rule our lives. They rule the way we think, the way we feel, the way we act and react, because we get stuck in words, in the form of words, and the rigid stories we tell ourselves and about the world in general. And
the curse of Babel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's well put. Thank you. Back to Charles, please.
To continue what you were just discussing, the ancient Chinese believed that words were magical. They enlightened, they transformed. You could just go down the list. So yes, there is a great deal of significance to words. And then early on, you posed the question about like, what can we do now? I mean, a good example would be like for your organization, a way to avoid you breaking your current rules until you maybe decide what to do about them. You can actually create or get together with people to create 2 other organizations that you have shared contact with. And if you change the names, then you won't be violating any oaths like as a Mason. You know, for example, Masons can interact in the US with Eastern Stars. You don't really have that organization in the US, and they do interact with Eastern Stars. As a matter of fact, many Masons are members of the Eastern Star. And as a matter of fact, they even go as far as to say, you know, they have to have a male present as a worthy patron. But what I'm coming to is just that you can create or get a group together to create 2 separate organizations, one for women and one that's co-ed. And then occasionally you do stuff like this together. And if their names are different, you won't be violating any oaths. And that's something you can do tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Charles, for that. Yeah, regarding forming other groups, one thing I'd say about this study group is that, as it's already been mentioned by Frater Kevin, that the SRIA is and always has been a male-only fraternity for Master Masons. And yet the Metropolitan Study Group, as it now stands, we, the members of the committee of the Metropolitan Study Group, are all of the opinion that it's vitally important that these meetings are for both men and women, members and non-members. That's one of the things I love about these meetings is they are open to all seekers, and long may this continue.
I guess the other thing that I'm alluding to with this is that this idea of belonging to something, it does something to the human character, I think. So that would be the, you know, if the study group can be, you know, if everyone can be considered belonging to the study group, then that side of our psyche where there's this need to belong to something, you know, that would be an added bonus. But what you're doing now is perfect. Don't get me wrong. I'm not pushing anything else. I'm just saying, you know, to add some icing to your cake.
Thank you very much.
Say that the study group is not really the SRIA, but you know, you could be a member of the study group and not a member of.
Yep.
And then ask a woman, how would they feel about that? You know, would that be enough to make them feel that this bias is removed over their head?
So, sorry, I was muted then. I said that's a very good question to put to any of the women joining us today or at any point in time, really. I do feel a great sense of belonging and a shared bond that I recognise that we all contribute to in these meetings. We are a gathering of people of like mind and temperament from all around the world, from very diverse backgrounds. But there is a very strong bond that I feel with many of our regular attendees, some of whom I've never met in person, but that's not needed. We've met and we get a sense of each other in these meetings. And yeah, long may this blossom and prosper. So I'd like to draw attention to a thing in the meeting chat here from Lucius saying, just another seeker of light, only been in a short period, but I'd be more than happy to share my resources and thoughts via email. So if anybody would like to contact Lucius specifically, then I would say now's the time to let him know in the chat. So does anybody else have any other questions for Kevin, or comments or observations, please? Okay, so this may be an appropriate time to bring our meeting for today to a close. And I'd like to just hand over to you, Frater Kevin, for any final words, please.
Just thanks for having me. I appreciate everyone listening and engaging. I'm honored to be here.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much on behalf of the Metropolitan Study Group, Frater Kevin, very much for your presentation today, and for everybody who's attended the meeting, and for your questions, your comments, your observations, for the sharing of ideas, and yeah, lots of love to everybody. I wish you all a very safe and hopefully peaceful rest of your weekend. And yeah, regarding peace, let's all in our own individual ways make sure that we are doing whatever we can in terms of prayer for peace to become victorious in the world. Victorious and triumphant. So yeah, lots of love to everybody. Thank you very much once again, Frater Kevin. We'll be back again on the third Saturday of November. And I very much look forward to seeing you all once again then. Have a lovely rest of your weekend, and love and peace to you all.